school committee to order. And at 5:35 p.m. on February 1st. And welcome everybody to Edgartown. Thank you, Edgartown, for having us here. For those of you who don't know, we're trying to take a little tour around the island and get a chance to see what other schools look like and hear about some of the unique features of your schools, and so that we can learn from and build a little more, tighten our fabric a little bit, maybe is the right word. So the first thing on the agenda is approval of the minutes, including but not limited to January 4th of 2024. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved by Nettie.
Second. And any comments, concerns, changes, additions? No? Okay, then we'll go ahead. We've got a couple people on Zoom, so we'll have to do roll call vote. So starting with you, Skipper?
Skipper,
Church.
Right.
Passiello, aye. Where it applies.
Kirk abstain.
Kuchera.
Nettie, aye.
Salad, aye.
Spot aye. Malik?
Malachi.
O'Brien?
O'Brien, aye.
Watts?
What's I?
And Houghton, aye. Great. Okay, so I wanted to just sort of start the meeting. I actually want to put out a, let me start over. I'd like to have a moment of silence. In the last 2 weeks, we've lost 3 young men in our community. All 3 graduated from elementary schools and the high school here. I know that all of you would join me in sending your thoughts and prayers to the Vogt, Engler, and Aaron Sharkovitz families. And so if you don't mind, if we could have a moment of silence for those 3 men. Thank you. The only other thing that I wanted to just say in some remarks is something that all of our districts are really looking at, some of the growing needs and challenges that we have with a changing community, and the demographics in our schools are changing, and support for students and staff and need to be looked at. And I think our job as we move forward is to look at how can we best support that through budgetary and policy discussions. And I don't think we can look at educating students in the same lens that we may have used 15 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago. We have an opportunity right now to really examine how we can work better with all of our learners, parents, and staff through the equity audit. And you may recall about, I don't know when, it was in the fall, Marge Harris came, and Marge Harris is working in the superintendent's office to oversee the equity audit. And as of yesterday, all of the administrators were trained in the equity audit. And during the month of February, each of our schools will be undergoing this audit. I think it's a great opportunity for us to learn more and to really hope that we can develop some strategies that will be supportive, not only within our individual schools, but across the island. And I hope that we'll be able to come to this body to share some of what has been learned, strengths and areas for growth and opportunities that each school has that may transfer and translate to our schools. So I was planning to invite Marge to come to our March meeting to talk about it, maybe a little early for her to sum up the audit, but hopefully there will have been enough time for that to have taken place so that we'll be able to hear from her. And then if appropriate, we can have her continue to come to these meetings so that we can hear from her what's happening next. And I would hope that in your locals that you would be able to do some of that work as well. So So that was basically it. Somehow I lost my, oh, there it is. Okay, so moving on. We would love to, at each place at the Tisbury School, we talked about the new school we were building. And so we're hoping that we could learn a little bit about the outdoor learning center and program that you all are doing here so that we can take notes. So I'll turn it over to Shelley and John. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our outdoor learning campus project. It's my pleasure to be here with my predecessor and colleague, John Stevens. And I'm going to begin by speaking a little bit about the funding, and then John's going to explain the timeline. But first, I'd just like to say that it was back in July of 2019, during my transition to Edgartown, when John first showed me what was then his capital improvement plan, and on it, he had the renovation of the outdoor playgrounds. And I never forgot that discussion, and then COVID-19 changed everything, and there were a few other competing priorities. But in the fall of 2022, we started to have discussions with town officials, with representatives from the town parks and recreation department in Edgartown, and also with the Boys and Girls Club. And it just seemed like it was the right time for Edgartown School to take the lead and to begin to make initial plans, to talk about what we could do to revitalize our outdoor space and to secure funding. And so we formed a small committee last year, and we contracted with a landscape architect who gave us some preliminary concept ideas, and that's what you can see up there. Some examples of what we might envision having, but we haven't made any decisions yet. We will be soon, but they gave us estimates, and then we brought it to the school committee, and the school committee approved the concept, and the estimated cost of the entire project is $1.5 million. It's broken up into 2 phases with the support of the Edgartown community. Phase 1 was approved at last year's April annual town meeting for $980,000. The design for phase 1 is currently underway with our new project manager and new landscape architects. And phase 2 is the smaller area. It's for our youngest students, our preschool kindergarten age kids, and it's estimated to cost $520,000. Last fall, we applied for $100,000 in community preservation funds, and we also hope to raise $25,000 in donations. The remaining cost, $395,000, was submitted recently as a request for a warrant article to see if the town will raise and appropriate the funds for phase 2 of our outdoor learning campus this April. So now I'm going to let John tell you about the timeline for phase 1.
Thanks, Shelley. Good evening. How are you? So the timeline to this point has been meetings, internal meetings with the architect, the project manager, the school staff, and the OPM. The OPM is from CHA. It's Michael Owen. You may know Michael from the Tisbury School project, also the Chilmark School HVAC project. So he knows the community, he knows the island, and he's worked very closely with the school to this point on this project. From this point forward, there are going to be a series of meetings with internal groups to the community. The PTA, SAC, the school staff and faculty, the students, the parents, and those meetings will generate ideas about what the play structures will look like within each of the 2 phase areas. The old kindergarten playground, if you know the layout of the campus, which is right here, that's phase 1. Phase 2 is the much larger playground for the older kids. That's on the far side of the K4 wing, which heads down in that direction. So from those meetings, we'll generate ideas as to exactly what the structures will look like. And those groups will look at examples from other newly constructed playgrounds throughout the Commonwealth. Those meetings will end on or about March 11th. And then once the concept design has been refined with more exact details as to the structure, appearances, and likenesses, then the project bid will go out on April 24th. Construction will start mid-June with an ending date, hopefully in the end part of September. So that's kind of a rough timeline of things. And I wanted to point out that it's kind of an sorry, Skip. The upside down here version, this being the phase one, which is the proposed playground for the older kids. That's going to be at the end of the K-4 wing, as I mentioned. It's going to be moved farther out in the event that the school may or may not want to in the future add its classroom capacity by expanding the K-4 wing out this way, which could give the school potentially 2 to 4 classrooms sometime in the future. So this is going to be moved out some as phase one. And this is phase two, what used to be the kindergarten playground here. So that's kind of the timeline and the top-down look of the playground project. Here you see some artist renderings of what it might look like on our campus. That's kind of it. Any questions about that?
Any questions from? Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the educational, maybe the educational component, or how you intend to use it as a educational piece? Yeah, please, Shelley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the most exciting components of this is our vision to have an outdoor classroom. And I think all of us recognize, certainly during COVID, the benefits of being outside, and many of our teachers were taking their kids outside, and we started to say, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had sort of like an amphitheater or something that we could utilize? And we want to have shade, some kind of sail or covering over it, something that could be used, all year long. And we can envision it being used not just for classrooms, but for, small performances, meetings, that kind of thing. So we're very excited.
So that's all part of the design
all
right now.
part of the
Oh,
phase
great,
one.
great,
Yeah.
great. Well, it's very exciting, and certainly, given that Mike Owen is part of the Tisbury School, he'll have some ideas as we move forward on our playground project. So really exciting. So, well, thank you. Thanks for having us, and thanks for the information. Before we move to the next, I was remiss in not welcoming Kimberly Kirk to our table. So all of us know Kim, but I just wanted to make sure, but she hasn't been at the All Island since she's been back in office. So welcome, and we're happy to have you with us. So sorry about that. Meant to do that at the beginning. Okay, so now we're going to move to the next item, which is universal preschool. And Alex has been working on this, so if you wanna give us an update, and we may need a vote on this.
That would be great. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate it. So those of you who have been following along know that, I don't know, a couple months ago, we started having this conversation about universal preschool on the island and the need for it. This is obviously an undertaking that requires input from lots of folks. There are lots of stakeholders in this process. And for us to be successful, we have to incorporate the points of view, the needs of those stakeholders in the process. So what we've done is, first I suggested to the committee what a set of stakeholders in this task force would look like. And these were people from across the community. And having gotten the approval to form that task force based on the kinds of people we're looking for, I then reached out to folks who fit that description. And so I've shared with the committee, but I'm happy to also list them out here as a part of this meeting, who those people are at this point in time. So school superintendent Richie is of course involved. Jenny Royal, who's the public school early childhood expert within our public school system. Also Heather Quinn, who's the early childhood education specialist for Martha's Vineyard Community Services. Cindy Andrews, who's the director of the Rainbow Place, which is a well-regarded preschool here on the island. Donald Betancourt, who's the principal of the, West Tisbury School. Lindsay Scott, who is the executive director of MV Youth. Fab Sornis, who some of you in Edgertown would probably know, is I think a very good advocate for the ELL community here on the Vineyard. Amy Houghton, our chair, and also representing in this case, Martha's Vineyard Hospitals, one of the largest employers on the Vineyard. Joanne Lambert, who is a family childcare representative, and she actually is the coordinator of the Family Childhood Network, Child Care Network at MD Family Center, part of MD Community Services. Madeline Way, who's a preschool teacher and was one of the early, I guess, adopters or creators of our Project Headway here on the Vineyard, myself. And we are also going to add somebody from the Wampanoag community, but that person has not yet been narrowed down. We have a few people that we're talking to, but we haven't narrowed down to that last person. So what I would love to do with the current list of folks is gain the approval of the All Island School Committee, so we can start moving forward, meeting, identifying, you know, what are our primary objectives, what are we doing today, what do we need to do, and, you know, sort of how to get there. So with that, I'd love to see if we can get a vote to approve this task force.
So maybe, we would need,
Questioning.
Yeah.
Is this gonna be a subcommittee of the all around school committee? Because they'll be reporting back to this group, right?
It will be,
yes,
We got,
yes.
do subcommittee.
right, because, you know, if we're undertaking anything that involves the public school system
Yeah,
on an island level, we're gonna have to approve it.
right, so it's gonna, so your subcommittee of this group is gonna work. In that case, I'll make the motion and recommend we create this subcommittee and appoint these individuals that Alex has presented to us.
Second.
Okay, any questions or concerns or
I
comments?
have just a question,
Sure.
Alex. I just wondered, did you happen to speak to Dakir Warren at the Boys and Girls Club? Because I know there had been talk about setting up a preschool through them as well, and there was that visioning.
That's
Do you remember
yeah.
what I mean with Lindsay Scott?
Yeah,
We met
yeah,
up in Showmark, and Dakir had been a part of that. Actually, it was the previous executive
Right.
director, but
Right, and Dakir, is he the person that used to be at the high school? Is that the-
he is, he's
Right.
the executive director of the club
Yep.
now, though.
Right, so, no, I have not communicated with them. I've communicated with lots of folks and actually did meet with Lindsay Scott and had a pretty, lengthy conversation with her. But there are I should add that there are other stakeholders who are gonna be involved in this process. People who've reached out to me, who I think add value, and I don't believe this task force is, going to be, working at the exclusion of anybody. And so we're certainly going to want to bring in other stakeholders and possibly even add to the task force as time goes on. But we needed to establish a group of people to start with. And if there are others like that person.
Yeah, I
it'd be
would just
appropriate.
encourage that just because there's a new building project going on right out there.
Right, totally.
That's going to include a lot of different opportunities. And so it'd probably be a good, connection to make.
Definitely.
Absolutely, and in that instance, where the Boys and Girls Club is involved, and one of the things that we're gonna have to look at is not just preschool, but also after school care
Yeah.
and things like that, where I'm sure that they would add a lot of
And the
value.
enrollment is exploding over there. I mean, he's done an amazing, absolutely amazing job. I'm a huge fan. I mean, I've been on the board for a long time, but I also just am so pleased with what he's done for the children. And I think it would just be a good connection to make and just a good reach out in connection with this.
Makes total sense.
Thank you.
So maybe the motion, and it may not really matter. I don't know if it has to be that this is exclusively the only group.
You can come back and add people
Yeah.
at any time, but we don't know if he wants to even serve, but like he said, I'm sure probably 50 people he needs to contact before he
Right.
finishes up.
And I'll add, I think that we don't want this to be, too restrictive a process.
Right.
Because there are so many stakeholders and so many issues involved that people will be sort of filtering in and out of this process over time. And it doesn't make sense for me to have to go back to the committee every time I want someone to be involved, because ultimately we're going to decide anyway. Right? So what I'd like to do is say, hey, this is how we're starting. Let's get these people going so we can figure out exactly how big this mountain is we have to climb. And then as we need to do things, if it's appropriate for us to come back here, we certainly will, to get your approval on moving forward.
Amy Rizwan has his hand up.
Rizwan,
Thank you, Alex. Thank you so much. I appreciate what you said. That this is a kind of evolving, flexible group that, like you'll draw people in, when you need them, and there will be different expertises to consult. Because just along those lines, I was thinking the NAACP or the Martha's Vineyard Diversity Coalition would also be some really good voices to have as part of the conversation. But I really appreciate the slate that you put together, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Rizwan.
So along those lines, should the motion be to establish a committee with such additions as may be determined from time to time?
I think that, yeah, are you amenable to that?
Of course.
And are you amenable to that? Friendly amendment? Awesome, okay, great. Well, I think it's exciting, and, I think we all would love to see what can be done in that area, and, so look forward to your leadership on that. Thank you very much for doing that. We do. So I would, start with you, Skipper.
Sure, it's all right.
Osceola, aye.
Okay.
Kuchera, Houghton, aye.
I think I need to abstain.
Solid.
Newman, aye. Excuse me, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's okay. Malik,
Malachi?
O'Brien,
O'Brien, I.
Watts.
What's that?
All right,
Cool.
great. That is terrific. Okay, so, the last two things we have on the agenda before we, well, we're gonna do the roundtable because, we're waiting for the superintendent. So is there any word on where things? Chris, are you still, in Chilmark?
I'm walking in the building right now, coming up the stairs.
I'm gonna be right behind her, so we've all gotta be close.
All right. So, what we've been doing is having a little roundtable to say what's happening in your district that is, noteworthy. I think it's an opportunity to, express, those things that are really great. Some of it, maybe there are challenges that are important to put on the table because we all have them, or, again, opportunities. So I'll start with, Skipper and Alex from West Tisbury School.
Chairperson.
Chairperson Jim right there.
Chairperson Jim.
Thank you.
Chairperson Jim.
Well, we're interviewing now for
Oh,
principal
right.
for Chilmark School. And that's a big item for us now. And you guys will have something to offer.
Well, I would love to know, a status update on, I'm a member of the committee that I'm not privy to exactly what's going on there, so I would like to know as much as anybody else. Robert is actually
I
part of
saw
the
his
interview
Jeep,
committee.
so he's gotta be walking up.
Mike?
Oh, yeah, I'll mute. Okay.
Hey, Mike.
I'm talking to Roxanne.
The gang's all here. We hear them.
So Robert, do you have anything you want to add about the principal? No pressure.
Not in this setting, given where we are in the process. I have something I'd like to add on later when we get to superintendent's goals. But in terms of the process, that's ongoing in the midst of.
Do you have any sense of, whether you'll have a decision, do you have obviously not a deadline because it needs to play out, but what's the goal for?
Probably 4 to 6 weeks out,
Oh, good, great.
if it follows course.
And anything at West Tisbury School that's, oh, go ahead.
I did one thing for the Chilmark School that may be relevant to the others. We have completed our HVAC upgrades on time and slightly under budget,
Nice.
and we are full heating and air conditioning in the building.
Oh, look, Mike's here.
And Roxanne.
Mike was only talking.
But what's also exciting about it is the initial feedback is that the electric costs will be less or already less than the oil costs. So the anticipated savings for this upgrade are already being realized.
Nice. That's great. Always good to hear about those kind of things. And, all right, Skip, West Tisbury School, anything about?
The only other thing that I can think of is, somebody came forward with a proposal for solar panels at the West Tisbury School, and we're looking at that as a potential, project for us. But I think that's very early stage at this point.
We're also talking about extensive renovation projects.
Yeah, those two are separate.
Those are,
Yeah.
all right. Catherine, Rizwan and Chris, what's happening at Oak Bluffs?
Rizwan, do you want to speak?
He's our chair.
Boy, what's to talk about? Yeah, I mean, so we just finished our budget hearing last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago it was now, with our select board. It sounds like everyone's still in budget season right now, but we're glad to wrap that up, and are just looking forward to defending that budget at our annual town meeting. If Chris and Catherine have anything to add, feel free.
Yes, Catherine.
I would just add in, Rizwan, that we're still working on a boiler project. And we, as much as we wanted to tackle it for this summer, we're pushing it till next summer. Based on the timing of when you order things and when you can get them in and when you can work on it. So it won't be summer of 24, it'll be summer of 25 that we'll be working on our new boilers at the Oak Bluff School, which I have to say our building is in amazing condition and we're really proud of it. And I would offer up to the town of Edgartown to tell their PTO and their parents and their staff, we have a beautiful new, it's not a whole new playground, but we have new tennis courts and a new basketball court that are amazing. And beyond that, it's kind of hidden by that, is a new, it's a playground facility, but it's more based for older kids. And this is why I'm telling you this. And a lot of it is like hardcore workout stations. And it was designed not to just be used as playground, but also the outdoor classroom phys ed ready. And there are stations all around our brand new giant soccer field back there. And I invite you all to go look at it, and maybe it's not what you're looking for, but maybe there could be elements that are really attractive to you, or it would give people a common language of which to talk about that we like this or we don't like that. So come visit.
Well, that's a perfect invitation. Maybe
Right?
we'll do the park course for the next All Island. That's right. We'll go from one stage to the next.
Amy goes first as the chair.
All right. Edgartown?
Edgartown.
Yeah.
Since the last update, I'm sure we had a meeting with the town regarding the budget. You just got an update on our outdoor campus, which we talked about at the last one. And it looks like we're gonna be taking a road trip to Oak Bluff soon to check out there.
And I know you have a meeting. after
Yeah, and
this.
by all means, stay.
Yeah.
7 o'clock, we're kicking off our meeting, so you
Awesome.
can listen in on our agenda.
All right. And Tisbury School. Jen?
You're the chair.
I'm gonna punt it to Mike because he's our biggest.
So I actually was in our new building, on Tuesday. I look forward to the day when you all can come and we can actually host sports again. I was in our gym. It's now a full-size gym. And so, we don't have to beg off on everybody else, and everyone's been really gracious to allow our kids to play basketball and volleyball and other sports in your gym. So it was nice. The other thing, when you change your building so dramatically, it's something that we have to start looking at is we're gonna have to start doing program changes about lunch. Right, we've been a school of 5 lunches or 6 lunches because of our tiny little cafeteria. And so we're now gonna be in this reprogram mode when we move into the building, because our cafeteria will be able to house probably a third of the school at a time, maybe a half. So and again, we're gonna have a real music room instead of a closet behind the gym. So now that we're seeing these things come to reality, it's kind of remarkable. Windows are going in and all those things.
Yes.
So that's been pretty exciting. And one other thing, which I'll mention at the high school on Monday. We have a partnership, I don't know if you saw the emails, either of you, that, shop class, it's not the right term, industrial arts, is, gonna be building window boxes for us. We'll supply the materials, they'll build them, and, our construction folks will bring them back to use in our campus. So, they reached out. It's a really nice partnership that, hopefully you guys, if other districts have opportunities, reach out, because the high school's very amenable.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Just as a segue on the sports, I went and, met with the school's student council a week ago. They asked if I would come to talk about what it's like to be an elected official and how do you become elected and what's the school committee, and it was great. So there were, and shockingly, it was at 7:30 in the morning and kids actually showed up. I think a couple of them were in their pajamas, but anyway, so they were talking and I asked them what was exciting, and they all said it was exciting because Tisbury was playing the Edgartown school in basketball, and they had all, and they said, we went to the game, and I said, great, who won? I don't know. So anyway, they loved the game, they loved that it was happening, but it was a terrific opportunity, so.
Kind of sad. I went to that school. I'm gonna miss the guy.
It'll just be a bigger gym in that cafeteria.
What's we gonna do?
So, great. All right, so, thank you. Great to hear all the good things and, appreciate learning about your schools. So next we're gonna look to, the superintendent's contract. And everyone should have received a copy of the contract. We've talked about it quite a bit, in the last couple of meetings. And so I wanted to, sort of turn that over to Jennifer to, bring us up to date as to where we are.
So right now, it may be in my email. I did not have a chance to check my email today. We were waiting. We had a meeting yesterday. We went over a couple more, not necessarily changes, but, just ironing out details in the contract. And went back to the attorney, and he is, working on redrafting that. It may be in my email. I'm sorry.
It was really a wonderful turnover. It should have been in all of the emails.
What's that?
He redlined everything.
Yes,
And
yes.
it was,
That was his first,
amazing.
that was his first
Yeah.
draft, so there'll be another draft coming.
So maybe
Oh.
there were just a couple of tweaks to it, and one was related to, and this is kind of an interesting topic that we went over, which is in section 8, if you have it in front of us. There was a request to change some of the funding for reimbursement of expenses that the superintendent often has to take on. And apparently when there are things such as a cabinet meeting where there's food, or if there's a professional development kind of activity and food is purchased, that there can often be a town or maybe two who refuse to pay those because they say that you cannot pay for food. So there definitely is there are tight restrictions on how you can spend taxpayer dollars on food, and but it's not a total restriction. And so what we were trying to determine was whether or not we could get some language that would support a request from the superintendent's office to each of the towns to pay for some of those nominal expenses related to staff morale and program development, that would be in line with those towns that have a difficult time paying for that. So there's not really any, it's just the language that we want to make sure is shored up to make sure that actually could be funded. So that was one thing.
Yeah.
And
then I guess, well, the one we decided we weren't gonna make was to to make it from 6 to 10 personal days, and we decided that we didn't need to do that. Longevity, is being asked for at 4,000 per year. And, he did request in that paragraph, in that section 8 and 9, to, lower the amount from 5,000 to 2,500, but in our conversations, we all agreed that, we should keep those amounts at 5,000 each.
So the section 8, for those of you who don't have the agreement in front of you, relates to those kind of expenses that the superintendent might have. And then section 9 relates to professional development for the superintendent. And so, you know, in an effort to try to bring some of the costs down, the superintendent had said that he would be willing to reduce those. And we all sort of agreed that as a new superintendent, we thought it was important for professional development to remain at a level that would enable him to get the kind of professional development that he needs. Doesn't mean he has to spend it all, but at least it's available there for travel and the like. So from the, so all of that is included, yes.
And that's it. Technical point, but it's not rollover money, right? If it's not used at the end of the year,
Yeah.
it goes back and.
Correct. So that he can't bank it up to get to 40 grand and then
No, it's like, but it
go to
goes- it starts to
Tahiti
look
for
like
that
yeah,
superintendent
right?
conference.
Trying to avoid that. Building up a large quantity.
So the bottom line is that the contract, we would be looking to, and I'm gonna look to your guidance on this, those of you who did the, in terms of the vote, how do you want the information? Do you just want the salary and, what is proposed? What is has everyone had a chance to look at it, I guess is the first question.
Not the latest one.
So I'm,
This one came, this one you sent yesterday, right?
When do we have our meeting?
Yesterday.
Wednesday.
Oh,
What's
what's today? Today's Thursday.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yesterday at 8 AM.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was
my
right
my
after that.
suggestion on this, there's obviously, it's a contract, so there's a lot of legalese that one will have to pour through if one were to make a decision based on that information. But I think what will be helpful is to understand what the compensation numbers are, particularly for the school committee. And this is my opinion, but providing that, I think that would be sufficient for people to make a vote. But if other people feel differently, that's fine.
I think we have to vote on the contract.
On the contract, that's true, but the tenets of the contract that we care about primarily are the,
Sorry about the fine.
well, if you wanna pull
Well,
through it, that's
Well,
fine.
it's the same
If-
contract that he had, with a
So
few changes,
Chris,
which we just went over.
Chris O'Brien,
You, I think it's important to, just so the committee can have full comfort that the attorneys have seen all the changes that are made and everything is approved by them. And the experts
point.
that are in the work of contract.
I think that that's absolutely fine. What would be helpful, before we do the final vote on the contract, and we can do that if, you know, at the March meeting. I don't think that's an issue if we've got sort of a consensus that we're in the right direction. But I think in terms of the numbers, the numbers haven't changed since everyone had a chance to review it. Well, actually, that's not true. That's not true. Okay. And you know what? I think we will send the final, drawn up contract, to you all, and we will do a final vote in March so that everybody feels like they have a chance to review it. Yes, sir.
If I may suggest, I think we should also accompany that contract with a cheat sheet so that people can see probably the highlights and not have to go through.
It'll all be redlined.
Well, I mean, what I mean is a separate
Just
document.
like a
Oh,
document
okay,
that just has the, okay, that's no problem. Does that feel like that? Is everybody comfortable with that? And Richie, are you comfortable with that? Okay. Yes, sir.
Go with the committee. Sure. See, you're offering a salary, a range of salary of $212,000.
That's what the contract stipulates. We haven't agreed to anything then.
No, I don't do. Okay, because last time we were talking, it was like 2, 2, 4, 5, 2, 7, something like that.
the total, and maybe that's what would be helpful is the cheat sheet that shows the total compensation has not changed at all, really. I mean, it's essentially, it's in the different buckets. So there were a couple of buckets that were removed and the base compensation was increased. So at the last meeting, it was at 211 and now it's at 212. But there's not any,
That's, I know. It wasn't 202, 205 or something like
It
that?
was, but not at the last meeting.
Which last meeting? Our last meeting?
yeah,
Our-
our last meeting, it was not. At the meeting prior to that, it was.
Did I miss a meeting?
No.
See that medication.
Oh,
I know, I.
Sure.
That was my position.
So we'll go ahead and send the final draft of the contract and a cheat sheet. So what we'll ask for is a redlined version and a final contract that's not redlined, and then a summary sheet, if you will. All right, great. All right, with that, the next item on the agenda is to you, Dr. Smith. And we'd love to hear about your goals and where we're gonna go with that.
I know there's a camera right here. I know, I've seen you. I'm like, look at my favorite.
that is so uncomfortable. You're huge of yourself. I saw you. Big school. Stop that.
I know.
Is it you doing that back?
Is this the one you sent? Is it the one that you sent?
I changed it, so, I did right at the end, yeah, no, it's the same.
Okay,
Same.
I've got the one from.
Oh, it is.
I figured, this is the, some may see it, I sent one this afternoon. Okay, so this will be a little bit different.
It was good. Susan had, yeah.
She did right now.
She said she knows.
Great presentation. I was there for all of it.
Oh, thank you.
In the wind. In the wind.
Sorry, no, I see.
Oh.
That's what I thought too.
Don't go into the church. Nobody. Something
I
like.
get it. And then, yeah, next cycle. So I'll put my above.
I haven't thought of
It's a
it.
very good question.
I'm hoping not.
But now it's like if you're a school.
There you go.
That's what it is.
I know. I can move on.
Are there people on Zoom?
What's that?
Are there people on Zoom?
Yeah. Rizwan, there, I saw a teacher. You know, so there's no one really monitoring.
Ellie has been, Ellie was letting me know if there were hands raised.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's the best.
Yeah, so this is kind of based off of it. So thank you very much. May I go ahead and?
Please,
Yep,
all
so,
you.
I've been working with the personnel subcommittee. They've given me some feedback in this area, but this is a draft and looking for feedback of the full committee, as we move forward. Now, granted, it's February and these are 23-24 goals, but it doesn't mean that, we've said we'll wait until we get full approval of these goals to start this work. Obviously, this work has been going on and going forward, so, but there is, clearly, looking for your feedback, and if there needs to be some tweaking or refinement, I'm all ears, and maybe that's something we can look at in March as well, so. So if you'll take a look again, those of you, all of you know, we solicited feedback, during my first year as superintendent. And from that feedback, Roxanne was just mentioning the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis that we did. We looked at the opportunities mostly out of this, and we did speak to the strengths and what was unique to each school. But we also, again, we looked at opportunities here, and Hope is with us here. She may be able to, kind of reinforce the Think Kids work that's been going on, but in 3 focus areas. Initially, I called these buckets. And so when we had our convocation back at the beginning of this school year, we went over these 3 bucket areas. And those 3 bucket areas are, I'm calling in this 3 focus areas. One was a system-wide commitment to our children.
Focus 2 was a commitment to nurturing a culture within our schools. And focus 3 was a commitment to a strong school community approach. This was all based on the feedback that we got from the cabinet members, from some of the school committee members, that went through and filled out the SWOT analysis. And so these were the themes that emerged. And from that, we put in areas, and these aren't the goals. Again, these are the focus areas and just showing the transition from our SWOT analysis, from our solicitation of input from our groups, to where they became focus areas. And now we're taking those focus areas and putting them into professional practice and student learning goals, and trying to tie those to the standards that are within the rubric for evaluating superintendents and central office leadership. So the first professional practice goal is an instructional leadership goal. And this is just an ongoing goal. It's just to improve our supervision and evaluation of principals and central office leadership. In every one of these goals, I've put down key actions or things that, behaviors that I'd like to have and steps that we'd like to take in moving forward this goal. So complete with all principals and district administrators, steps 1 and 2 of the educator evaluation cycle, complete a formative evaluation conference with the principals, conduct at least 3 school and classroom visits to each school. And then finally complete a summative evaluation report for all the supervisees and analyze their goal attainment. So that would be part of the summative evaluation.
Can I just ask you, do you want questions while you're speaking, or do you
Yeah,
want them
that's
to?
fine.
Okay,
Yep.
so,
makes
so why don't we just take a pause after that first one? Does anyone have any questions or comments about standard 1 instructional leadership?
Well,
Alex,
I'd actually like to comment about focus areas before we get to that, if that's okay, Richie.
Yeah, please.
that's fine. Go for it.
So for those of you who are not familiar with some of the acronyms that are incorporated here, and someone can tell me if I'm mistaken, because this is only my research. Vocal and Celis are both programs that are administered, they're offered by the state.
They are, yep.
They're, so I believe with Vocal, it's about engagement, safety, and environment, and Celis stands for social and emotional learning indicator survey.
Exactly. Yeah,
Right,
they're
so-
both instruments for feedback.
So I guess what I see, and I know you're gonna go into this in some of the practice goals, but when I look at these 3 areas of focus, the only, the emphasis on teaching models that best support all learners is great, and I see, co-teaching, which I know you have enumerated later in this document. But then you also talk emphasis on supporting most challenged learners as informed by MCAS. I feel like as goals, I know that they're broad goals, but I see a lot of social emotional learning in these goals. And I worry that there isn't enough, and maybe enough richness in the way that you're looking at academic achievements. And I know that there's a time, I'm not discounting that. Don't do social emotional learning unless you want to empower kids to be successful in the classroom. But, for example, and maybe we can go into this later, using MCAS as a foundation to make more than aggregate decisions, for schools concerns me. There are other programs that are more granular, like, for example, iReady, that I know some schools in this area use, that could also inform some of those decisions. So I guess my question is, if you look at the number of words in these goals, relatively few of them talk about academic achievements. That doesn't mean that there isn't a high emphasis on it, but I just want to make sure that we are emphasizing academic achievement here, just as important, it's certainly equally as important as social and emotional learning.
So,
Please.
so I hear what you're saying, Alex, and as I was driving here, I heard Amy speak about the equity audit. There are a lot of things going in our system, and plenty of areas of academics that are embedded in each of the schools. And in the end, in choosing some of the centrally led work is where we're emphasizing these areas. these emerged again from a very authentic, ground up kind of a solicitation. And so, and these are the areas, or these are the ways that we intend to support them. You're right, academic achievement and emotional health are very closely tied together. And so when you look at this, for me, it's not a leap. I hear what you're saying about iReady. In my first draft that I sent to everybody, you may have seen what each of the schools are doing in their preparation in their academics, and you would see iReady embedded in some of those schools. Matter of fact, most of those schools. Chilmark is taking that on, West Tisbury, the town of Oak Bluffs. iReady is embedded in what they're doing, and it's their progress monitoring instrument. And so those are measurements, but also iReady is being used to advance the academic program, but it also embeds with our MCAS. And I want to emphasize that MCAS is an instrument that reflects the frameworks, the standards by which Massachusetts drives its educational program. And the fidelity of the test to the actual frameworks is very strong. When these first came out, and as they've been tweaked into MCAS 2.0, MCAS remains a test that's a very strong reflection of the frameworks. So that's why I want to use that as an indicator as to whether our frameworks and our standards are being moved forward. The work that we do, we meet within the central office. The schools have emphasized standards instruction, not MCAS testing. But when MCAS was first, the results were first released after the embargo in September and October. I think MCAS really became a very, very big topic on the island within the schools and in the communities. And really, in the end, more than a few things. As we went through the pandemic, I think we stopped emphasizing certain areas. As we came out of into this year, all of you know that we strengthened our security in all of our schools. That was an area that we wanted to reemphasize. And MCAS, with the indicator of the results that were released, tells all of us, all of our district and school-based administration, that we need to focus on those practices once again. Not necessarily test-based practices, but standards-based practices. So it is in here, but what I wanted to measure, some of the things that we're pushing forward, like co-teaching, is an academic, is an instructionally based practice, not necessarily a programmatic practice. And Think Kids and the collaborative problem solving model. I think we have heard in all of our school committees about discipline, and that is going across the Commonwealth. Collaborative problem solving and models like it are models that the Department of Education, Department of Elementary and Secondary Education are emphasizing and pushing. And Think Kids is collaborative problem solving. It's one of probably the more efficacious collaborative problem solving models. So those two hand in hand are instructional, but it also advances our ability to advance instruction. Because we have seen that from the SWOT analysis. And clearly, if the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is emphasizing it, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is seeing upticks in discipline. So I would say it is embedded. I appreciate what you're saying, not disagreeing with what you're saying. I just feel like these are areas of emphasis that I want to, push forward to you. It's not, we're not precluding anything instructionally. Again, there is so much going on in this school system that are new or deepening initiatives that we've had before, or new initiatives that I'm not emphasizing in these goals.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
Anyone else have any, Mike?
Yeah, so I love how these read, where I'm looking for me the little extra piece that says, how will we know?
Yeah.
you were successful? Like, and I look at evidence would be through multiple professional, I'm looking at two, like the lesson and teacher surveys, but how do we measure you?
Yeah.
Whether these were like, you met them and were successful with them?
So that,
What's that, like, how does that look on an output basis?
right.
This is
So-
really hard.
How does co-teaching,
Or how do we measure, would you put in here, like, these are things we want to measure you on?
right, okay.
Tell me, you get an output that allows us to go, Richie, you did a great job with that, or, hey, I think that needs more work, or,
Yes.
yeah,
So-
I'm looking for that translation piece for us.
Yep.
It all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I wanna know how I look at you and go, you did a great job.
But how do we know? I hear you loud and clear. So on the first one, in the instructional leadership for, the evaluation cycle. Last year, I think I heard, some feedback from this committee about the 360 leadership survey as being a pretty good indicator. It not only, evaluates me as a superintendent, but it evaluates our group, our cabinet administration and how we work together. And so that would be, a pretty strong indicator of goal one, right? That would be, other things could be, other survey results and that kind of thing, like EDSCLS survey results, that our administration may take. Because you can see actually, as long as we're getting a strong, response rate, you can see even slight variations of improvement or decline, from even in a favorable rating, you might have some discrete areas of less than favorable and more favorable. And so you may see that movement, from previous EDSCLS. So that's what I mentioned as far as survey goes. As we move into, number two, I don't think we were talking about goal two yet.
Can I just clarify?
Yeah.
EDFCLS is a survey that is conducted with staff at each school, right? I just want to make sure people on the committee understand. what
So,
this is.
it's ED is basically ed.gov, so it is a Department of Education, survey. And it is climate survey. And, we have administered it in the past. I don't feel like we were getting the response rates that I thought, but clearly we weren't getting the response rates that made, the final results as valid as we want them. Last year, we embedded this on a professional development day. And so we captured people on a professional development day to fill this EDSCLS out. We do have the survey results from June of 23. Those were coded and we used those in our cabinet and we looked at it from school to school to see how we could maybe push those forward within our schools. And so we're at different rates and I need to make sure our different principals are using those as we had spoken about and as we've talked about through the fall. But that's the desire on the staff side of things. We use Vocal and Celis. Those are for students. So we would look at those as a survey of climate, of feelings of safety, of feelings of belongingness. Those are the things that are indicators from Vocal and Celis. And then as far as EDSCLS, that's also a parent survey. So we did send that out in June. We did not get great response rate. So you'll see somewhere in my goals as we move forward, that's something that we want to emphasize to try to get a higher response rate. That's a goal in and of itself, because until we get there, then the results we're seeing are not valid, not as strong as we'd like to see it.
Just a follow-up on that,
Yeah.
how, because we're in February, we're gonna have February vacation, how do you anticipate getting those surveys done and administered in between now and June, I guess is, and maybe you don't, but for us to be able to then be hearing, because the idea would be that as these goals are approved, that at each meeting, you're giving us an update on where you are in these goals. And so pushing it out, it just makes it harder for you to report on the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
And so, and I think some of the evidence will be brought in presumably in that, and whether it's, I've conducted performance evaluations on 5 of the principals, and we've done the evaluation. This is how it done, in raw data, I've done all of those. Some of them are easy to quantify, others not so much. I just have concerns that as we you know, if we don't get to the finish line, it's gonna be harder and harder for you to be able to express what you're doing, what you're putting in place. And if your evaluation is based on what a survey result is, you're not gonna have a lot of ability to impact what's on that survey.
Understood. Thank you. Well said. And, so just to respond, what I'm looking for is, we have not had a practice of getting feedback. And then incorporating the feedback. So the first step is getting strong feedback and making that part of our culture. So what I'm looking for, and that is something as far as the calendar goes, looking for response rates. That is a strong goal. And then creating a culture, not just within our schools, but a community or parent culture where there's an expectation. Hey, where is the survey? How can I give feedback? To where right now we're not at that place. So one of the goals, or the goal, one of the ways to evidence that is looking for and putting a threshold of a response rate, a percentage that I'm looking to reach. And it's a pretty robust, but hopefully reachable 80% response rate is what we're looking for. Right.
I think
yeah,
I think
yeah.
you're nuts.
And
I mean,
so I'm not.
surveys are, I mean, if you
I'm
get
not
25%, you're gonna be.
These are, I'm not shooting for, I think we can get that with staff. I'm not sure, it's not likely we're gonna get that with parents, but I want to make sure that we drive a goal by, an actual goal that we want to achieve. Again, the stronger the response rate, the more valid the responses are and more indicative of where we need to go with those those responses. And what we basically was like the SWOT. The SWOT informed a lot of this. We want to do something similar to responding to the community. That's the next step. And we want to now start looking at how we respond to the staffs with this information.
Alex?
Yeah, so to Mike's point earlier, you know, as in terms of accountability, you talk about increased coherence of school-specific goals with system-wide areas of emphasis through this increased supervision. And I think what we would probably feel more comfortable with, notwithstanding the fact that I agree with Amy, it's difficult to get, you know, the kind of response rates that you're hoping for. That you see trend analysis, you see actionable data, right? And while we don't have to get into the minutia of what that looks like, that could be done on an individual level. You know, it could be that we see, hey, now there are problems in this school that require some sort of change. We now have to implement that change. I think what we'd like to see is, hey, Richie identified that problem and here's his plan for change.
That's what I would get.
So no, I hear you loud and clear, and that could be something, whether than, you know, I'm also open to ideas of how to do that. I'll go back to what Amy brought up with our equity audit and MAEC. Not to toot my own horn, but I'm gonna toot my own horn. So when I was assistant superintendent, Leah Palmer, myself, Leah drove this. I'll give her a lot of credit. We worked through DESE and a group called Black Print to start our cultural responsiveness work targeted with our leadership. That partnership did not do well. I'll just say that that the group that we were working with throughout was one that fell off. And last year, we identified the Mid-Atlantic Equity Consortium as a group that we wanted to work with, and we're pushing that work forward. The people that we're working with, they say it's rare to see a superintendent so directly working in that. That is something very important to me that I value very highly. I'm not saying it to toot my own horn. I'm saying it because if I made that a goal, I believe I could show step by step that goal attainment. But I believe that will manifest in what we're looking for. So I'm not making it a goal. I'm making goals that are global, that are going to be goals that I think are going to be challenging to reach. And, you know, again, working with the school committee. When Amy took on the All Island chair, you know, that was one of the things we talked about, was to start, you know, embedding goals and having the goals be not just mine, and being a one-way conversation, but making it a two-way conversation. So I'm open to feedback. This is a draft, and I'm open to ways that you might feel I can evidence these things. No doubt I have a bit of a challenge on some of these things and how to evidence it in the context of an evaluation. I feel like I can evidence it to say we're making progress. But in the context of evaluations, a little different.
So, just one, in the interest of time, we've got 20 minutes before the next meeting starts. I don't think we need to, I think everybody has this, so I don't think we need to go through and have you, rehash each of these because we've done that a little bit. So I think I'd really prefer more of an open dialogue and questions from folks on where they'd love to see some refinement, or if they have questions or comments or concerns. So Kelly, I'll start with you.
Richie, so just for clarification's sake.
Yeah.
Because I know I sent like a bunch of feedback in December. The focus areas feed into your actual goals, which are aligned to the standards, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. I think, kind of echoing a little bit with what was said, and I recognize like you don't know what you create the goal and then you don't always know that total outcome, but I think defining what is success or what would be an outcome more clearly would help me better evaluate you. So just as an example, like for standard 1 instructional leadership, I see your like improved supervision and evaluation of principals and central office leadership. Like that's good, but and then your key actions are like do this, do this, do that. But what's missing is like what makes that successful? Like what does good look like?
Right.
Like what is the outcome? So like when you complete the evaluation, like what does good look like? What is the outcome of that? So that I can then say you did that well from like a scale of 1 to 3, like you're extraordinary, like versus insufficient in when you did that. I'm probably not articulating it as well as I
I
need to, but
No, I think that you are, and I think that completing the educator evaluation cycle, that's part of your job. That's what you should be doing. That's in the job description of your work. So the next step is, if we're going to evaluate how effective are you at doing those evaluations, what would be success? Would success
Right.
look like
Yeah.
it's not just that you completed those, because if you didn't, that's enough of it for us to say, you know what, this guy doesn't know how to do his job. But what we want to know is you completed it and you had results. If someone wasn't performing where they should be performing, that you felt like you were able to put things in place that demonstrated that you saw an increase in their ability by the end. So
like
Jim?
develop the framework for feedback based on that. That could be like integrated into X plan for next year, something.
And have you established a before and after? This, and how do you do that? And that's one question. The other is going back to the MCAS. Is that the only standard you would use? And how reliable is the MCAS for that?
So first two questions, or the first question, and I would like to call all the way back to what was Amy was saying and what Kelly was saying, but I'll start with you. Number one, how do you measure from, basically a baseline and improvement in the area? I measured off of my own. So I did not choose.
You have to have an exit requirement, right?
Yeah, as far as, there's a summative evaluation requirement.
Well,
Yes,
that would be your exit.
Yes, that could be.
Judging on what your expectation is at the end.
It could be quality of feedback. It could be, but as Kelly was talking, I wrote a couple of notes to myself. But I'll go back to why is it one of my goals? I'm in the new superintendent induction program through the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. And that is a required goal from them. So a couple of years ago when Robert and Chris and Catherine and help me out. Kimberly was on it. When we first did that work, I had this gigantic document, if you all remember, and you're like, what are you doing? And you're flooding yourself and us with goals. And I went to new superintendent induction program and they said, these are your goals. And I came back and we expanded on those 3 areas, but those became my goals. This new superintendent induction program is a 3-year program. And so you'll see this evaluation goal going into year 3. So that's there, but I can base that off of my own quality of evaluation. Shelley Einbinder can say it, John Stevens can say it. Good evaluation is challenging to do. Finding the time and that kind of thing. What I would want, and to answer Kelly's question, what does good look like? I would say, one of the intended outcomes of better supervision and evaluation would be more collaboration. So more time spent with principals, for them to reflect on their own goals, because if their goals are aligned to school improvement within their own schools, they have time to reflect and report to me. They have time to continue to keep that in the front burner.
Yeah.
So that work continues to advance. So those more focused conversations around things like that during the supervision and evaluation period. And then going back, help me, Amy, what was?
I think you're getting to where I want to be, and what Amy was asking about is, if you can come back to us and say, I did evaluations of all of these folks, and because you can't confidentiality, right? You can't come back and say, the person has this to work on, but here's the themes that I took out of all of those evaluations. And for individual schools, they now have these targeted improvement areas. And flip of that is, and the things that they've identified they're doing excellent, I want to share those things, right? And come back and tell us, you've done that. That's what I'm looking for.
That's
as the
it.
themes in here.
It's like what you just said, Richie, around like, the goal is to leverage supervision and evaluation to create an environment that's more collaborative. Like, that is your goal. And then your measures would be, one example is, this is an outcome of that. This is an outcome of that, and Y is an outcome of that. And then when we can look, when we evaluate, you can say, there's the goal, here are the 3 measures. Richie, tell us about those 3 things, and then I can actually root myself to something that's like tangible.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I understand it, it's more specific. It's
Yeah.
just more specific and it's more accountable, I guess.
I'm gonna let Alex have
Thank you.
one
Sorry.
quick question, and then I'm coming to this side, because you guys haven't had a chance yet.
So it's not even a question, so it makes it easier, right? I think the word that we're all sort of circling around is performance, right? We want to say, what's a performance metric that we can use as an evaluation about how things are going, right? And there's gotta be, I mean, MCAS is one way to look at it, but there are other, and that's why I brought up iReady. There are other metrics that are available for us to consider to say, hey, this is an empirical way of judging how things are going. Just as I would think that you would want to have some empirical way. Obviously, there's a qualitative way as well, but an empirical way to say, hey, at this school, this is how things are going. I think that's kind of what we're getting at here, or at least that's my impression.
Was there any comment on this side of the question? Because I think at this point, it's more valuable for Richie to hear questions and
Yeah,
so
this
that
is
he
helpful.
can,
Thank you.
nothing over here. Chris? Okay,
Just being able to measure the goals.
correct.
Balance.
Right, go ahead,
And
Catherine.
measure the goals given the rubric and the forms that we provide.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the tricky part, is
Like,
trying
it's
to,
like, here are Richie's goals, which are formed by your superintendency program, which I think is brilliant, because yes, you came with like 45 goals. And then you're like, and here are 3 I have to do, and we're like, well, why don't you just make those 3 the ones that we're focusing on? But, so we have those that are informed by your superintendency training, and then we have this evaluation tool that we're beholden to, that we have to somehow do this to like make them speak to each other and come up with. So for me, that's the biggest rub, is is somehow making them speak the same language so that we have we're using the right tools to get at the data you're providing.
So,
No.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
thank you. So, you know, I'm gonna be frank, that is my challenge as well. So, you know, I think, well, though 22 years in the system, I'm not gonna keep saying I'm a new superintendent, because I feel like, I'm no longer. I look like I'm no longer, and so, but I feel very much like, there are certain areas, like meshing, with the work that I'm doing with the standards, and actually having, evidence of each of those indicators that are true evidence is a challenge for me as well. I think what may help is what the personnel subcommittee has already been doing. You know, if there's that continued meeting on a monthly basis to say, hey, how are you looking? Kind of progress monitoring meeting against the goals may be helpful. So it's not all one shot at the end, but you've got kind of a collection of work as it builds. And again, February, but I think we can get there.
Okay, so what we had talked about was just kind of refining some of these goals through the work at the personnel subcommittee. I think we can still do that, and obviously the goals are going to be moving, you know, and coalescing a little bit more. I think we can all sort of give you some support in coming up with measurable goals in some of these areas, which would be fine. So if people will endeavor to really take a look at this and see if you have some thoughts on, you know, are there outcome measures that you would like to see in this district that fit into one of his goals? Because that would be another way to come at it from the back end. What are some things that, you know, I was thinking as an outcome, that for your instructional leadership, that the measurement is that all principals will have a path toward improvement based on the evaluations that you have done. And so, or that all principals will be proficient, or whatever the measure is within this rubric. And if they're not, that there's a performance improvement plan in place. So, you know, something along those lines, because I think that's the disconnect for us, because we get, you know, as leaders in the schools, we get asked a lot of questions about our principals. And our response is, that's not in our bailiwick, yet that's what's one of your goals. So it's hard for us to, you know, sort of bridging that and giving us the information to be able to say, I've done these evaluations. My goal was to get all of them wherever it was, you know, that however you define where you want principals, where they were, where they are. And that's, I think, then you can report that to us and say, I've done that, and everybody's got their path forward.
Great.
Okay.
I understand.
Does that make sense? Okay, so yes, Chris.
Just when would you like that be for the whole committee?
I think if you could have it, is it possible to have it within the next 2 weeks? Do you think anybody who, and,
Got a vacation coming up in.
it's gotta go to Jennifer Couture. She's the chair of the personnel subcommittee.
Sorry, Jen.
You don't have to do it, you just a
Yeah,
collector,
that's fine.
she's the collector. So, do you want me to give you until the end of the month? Is that easier?
We've got a vacation coming
Our
up.
next meeting.
Our next meeting is March,
Let me see.
it's actually, I think the
Yeah, but
first,
The subcommittee.
the subcommittee, we don't have a meeting set to.
We should,
No.
Not yet.
Yeah,
but then
we
it-
will.
we should get one
The
well in
third
advance
week
of
of,
the.
yeah,
AIC.
yeah. So it'll be within the next couple of weeks.
I think, man,
So, yes,
so the next high school meeting is March the 4th.
so.
So it would be Thursday,
March the
February 29th. But we're on vacation.
Right.
So we might want to do it the following and just not proceed that one. And I don't see it yet on the calendar,
I
but
have it in for the 22nd.
22nd.
For the high, for our next
For all,
AIC.
yes, you do have it on there. I'm looking, I went backwards. There it is.
That seems like it's.
On the all.
I think that's gonna be, do you guys think that's too, I don't think we're gonna have enough time to do the personnel stuff. And it's right, so I think if you all are okay with us doing it 1 week after, so doing it the whatever that is, the 6th or 8th or 10th of March,
It would be the 7th.
the 7th of March, will that work for folks if we push that back a week? Okay.
All island.
For all island, will be March 7th, and then we'll figure out a personnel subcommittee meeting.
What time for the all, I apologize.
5:30, and we can do it at the high school, but I'm hoping that Chilmark, West Tisbury, and Oak Bluffs are going to step up so we can keep our tour going. Does anyone wanna bring us to your school? You should be proud. All of you should be fighting for this opportunity. It saves you a drive. Should we
You
go to
could-
West Tisbury next?
As long as Donna's okay with it.
But I was just gonna say that I'm hesitant to offer anything less.
Yeah, let's do it. Nice.
Sure, I'll offer it up. There you go. Let's, well, why don't we talk to Donna and
Okay,
make sure.
we'll,
she's okay.
we'll announce the location,
She's always ready.
potentially West
Yeah,
Tisbury.
I'm sure she'll be ready by then.
Okay, just because, in the interest,
She's at a finance committee meeting
Yeah,
somewhere, probably.
just in the
on the
interest of time,
premise. She's
Richie, the only other thing I would say, in terms of trying to listen to what folks are saying is, I think that you have a lot about helping challenged learners, a lot about high needs learners. There's really not anything here that speaks to parents of children of it who are advanced learners. And how do we ensure we're not having those parents and students not have them as part of your goal seems like an omission. So if there's a way to put something in there that really speaks to, understanding the social emotional part, but I think also making sure that those who are at the high end of academic achievement have opportunities and ability, ways to continue that. Roxanne?
So are we going to come to the end of this cycle in June, or is it good? Yes, so.
No, we put it to the fall because of just this.
But this contract has the start of the year, new goals.
And then we could work on.
We don't have to match, that's what we learned, that we don't have to match the goal
it could
cycle
evolve.
with his contract, exactly. And we decided that doing it in the fall, it gave us more time to get to where those goals are. Yes.
So Robert did make a good point earlier when you were talking to me, which is, we don't want to reinvent this process every year. So we want to make sure that in these goals that we set forth, these are goals that we want to be achieved in perpetuity. Obviously, they change over time as the needs of the school system change. But we want to make sure that these are goals that are strategic goals, not just what's happening in the next 6 months.
Exactly.
The goals can stay relatively the same, but the measures could change.
Okay.
So that's just something to keep in mind.
Chris?
When, I apologize, I was reading when you said what you said, you added on, meeting the needs of high learners. Can you characterize the other groups that were identified? You said children of.
Advanced learners?
I just said I use advanced learners.
Right, but
Yeah,
prior to that, you named other groups. It was.
that were in
PLL.
here, that were in, that seem to be identified, high needs.
It was all high needs, so I would say that if you could also incorporate the needs of all students, because if you got high needs and you have advanced learners, there is the mass of children that fall in the middle that they do need to be included. That would be great.
So I would say, may I,
Please.
as the group, I definitely could put high learners in there. I will say that co-teaching, is a model that addresses all learners, and I can better define that and how that does.
Yeah.
But if it's the desire of the group for me to go, and really identify a goal area, I can come back, with that next draft.
It could be as basic as, identify enrichment areas for all learners, it's something along those lines so that we have an ability and then your evidence is we did, the science fair 16 times in February for those advanced science learners and, sorry, Roxanne.
No, but yeah, I know what you mean, so I've got that. Thank you.
When we got the first draft, you had identified that we should have, you kind of broke it out.
The schools, great.
Sure.
Schools, yeah.
And I wonder, and this is just me chatting, and maybe, how do we not be so savage, you know, how?
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah. You gotta hit those
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
quickly.
I got
You
it.
gotta move out today.
Okay. All right, so we've got a couple of really quick things. We've got a couple of really quick things we need to get done. We've got some personnel. We have resignations that we need to accept.
Somebody's.
Thank you. So. I want to, so the first one is Stacy Voorhees, who is a speech and language pathologist with our school system. She is asking or informing us to that she is going to retire from her position and retirement. And Skipper can correct me if I'm wrong. A retirement is an acknowledgement and acceptance of Stacy Voorhees and her time working with us. So she would do this at the end of the 24 school year.
I would entertain a motion to accept the resignation of Stacy Voorhees in June 30, 2024.
So moved, Sal.
Second, Brian?
And the next is.
We need to vote on that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Skipper?
Aye.
Schritzer, aye.
That's the law.
Houghton, aye.
Aye. Sal, aye.
Scott, aye.
Newman, I.
O'Brien.
Malik? Oh, sorry.
Malachi.
All right, and next?
And the next is the resignation of a bridge, West Tisbury Bridge ESP, Mia Robinson. And she regrettably has to leave her role as an ESP. So it's a resignation that she has.
We should acknowledge.
Schritzer, second.
All in favor?
Brian.
Schritzer, aye.
That's the law.
Houghton, aye.
Aye. Sal, aye.
Scott, aye.
Newman, I.
O'Brien, aye.
Malachi.
All right, yes, go ahead. Hope. Please, yeah. The ESP headway for approval to hire. Yes, please do.
So you got it.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So we've been talking about the need for people in, yes, for kids, the increasing need of kids. We need ESPs, we put that in the budget for next year. We have a need right now for an additional ESP. We've identified some money in the 680 budget under the bridge compass classroom area and the 680 budget. I think there's some, because people didn't take a family plan that we had actually allowed for. And so my ask is that we are able to advertise for a half a year position from now to the end of the year for an ESP that will become one of the budgeted positions. That's in next year's budget. It's not, would be in addition to those, but we can go over the one of those four ESP.
Would the person, would the just for clarification for all, if you hire someone now, are they going to have to reapply for the position, or are they being hired as a 6-month position, or are they being hired as a permanent position?
Most of our ESPs are on their own and then maybe apply.
Okay.
So.
Okay, a motion to accept a half-year position for an ESP in Project Headway.
Okay. Second, any discussion? Yeah.
Is the savings in the health insurance line gonna be enough to cover this?
Yes, I was assured by Mark that it was.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Schritzer, aye.
That's the law.
Houghton, aye.
Aye. Sal, aye.
Scott, aye.
Newman, I.
Roxanne, yes.
O'Brien, aye.
Malik?
Aye.
Great, okay. The last thing we have is the approval of Appendix A. Everyone should have received that, and
So our Appendix A committee has met on 2 occasions to consider all of these asks. And these would fit into Appendix A upon your approval. We have a scoring rubric that goes through and considers how many children or students that they're working with, the frequency and the year and the frequency per week, the amount of facility use that's required, the amount of time that they're away from the building, and so on. So those are some of the components of the rubric. We went through, and there are a few areas. If you have that in front of you, I will say that Stephanie Arens for the big band at Martha's Vineyard Regional High School, we have recommended for a step F, and step F has a stipended range from $14.40 to $18.90. So there's a step within each of those categories, however long they've been doing that work. Junior high football would be Mike Magarossi. He would be the AD of junior high football. We have determined that that would be a step G or a category G, and the stipend would range from $1,280 to $1,680. The 6th grade nature classroom is something that Eric Butler has been doing, and that is a designation of the letter I, and that stipend would range from $960 to $1,260. All Island Honors Orchestra is Rebecca Laird. This has been in place, but there's I think a growth in need and a growth in the amount of work that is going into that, and the number of children that the two All Island Honors Orchestra and All Island Junior High Orchestra, there's more participation. And so Rebecca Laird for Honors Orchestra would be a designation of G for $1,280 to $1,680, and then All Island Junior High Orchestra would be a designation of F, $1,440 to $1,890. We have Junior High Chorus, Mary Alice McCann, designation of G, $1,280 to $1,680. Morning Gym for Michelle Pecor, a designation of G for $1,280 to $1,680. And then Swear, which is something that has existed from Kayla Beckia Zeitz senior project, Stand With Everyone Against Rape, has endured past her senior project, and Amy Lillebois and Matt Malowski has been doing that for several years. And we're looking to put that in Appendix A at a designation of F with the stipended range of $1,440 to $1,890. And so I'm asking for the committee to consider approval of these so they can become part of the contract.
I have a motion.
So move mine, Eddie.
Second, as presented.
Second.
Just to prove the question,
Yes, sir.
when would this take effect?
So I'm gonna work with the JLMC. Usually it takes effect at the end of the year. There's been, I mean, not at the end of the year, the start of the new year, because we want to see completion of certain years before it takes effect. But I'm working with the JLMC, or the Joint Labor Management Committee, to determine when that should really fall, because it's gonna be a kind of a contracted thing. So I'm gonna follow
And
what we come out of
the
that.
twenty budget becomes this amount of money that you're proposing.
If they're in this year's, that's gonna be a consideration of approval for this year, so.
So can I ask, who sits on the Joint Labor Management?
So
Committee?
it's myself and, from the schools, sometimes we ask others from the schools to join if there are questions specific. But there are 3 co-presidents, so Gina Patty, Anna Cotton, Sean Betancourt.
And there's not a school committee member on that?
No, it's something that if you all would like to do so, you can, and I can invite you all. It's something that has gone on. I feel it's important to have regular meetings with that. Yeah,
Just interesting because
yeah.
Robert and I were just having this discussion that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if we had something like
We
that.
have an advisory board that's gone on that we meet monthly, and the advisory board is the 3 co-presidents of the MVEA plus the building representatives, and that's been an ongoing thing where school committee hasn't been involved. So if that's something we want to consider, I'll talk over with them and make sure everything's
What's the
on
Appendix
up.
A committee appointment?
I'm gonna come to you.
A lot of.
Go ahead. Just to finalize that, I think that in light of what's happening in Newton, I think developing rapport and relationships between
School committee
the
and.
school
and
committee
union.
and
Yeah.
the union would be something that would be worthwhile.
Sounds
And
great. Yeah.
So with that said, and other issues that we don't have time to enter in and weren't on the agenda, I would like to convene a meeting of the negotiation subcommittee sooner rather than later. And I would also like to reach out formally to the three heads and invite and gauge the contract for the advisory. The language for the in the contract for the advisory is very specific. It does not include school committee in any way. And I'd like to explore, I'd like the negotiating subcommittee to explore an opportunity to develop this prior to the next cycle.
That sounds great. I think it's a good idea. Mike and I have talked about that. And we've talked about trying to convene such a thing this year, before we enter into our third year of the contract.
I'm sorry, back to Appendix A.
Somebody clarify something for me. All the appendix A positions you have been mentioned just now are district wide, in the all island district. But does this appendix A also include the high school coaching?
Yeah, it's a different classification, but yes, it would.
So approving this,
Yeah.
is this a yearly approval? Or is it tied to contract?
It's any time if anybody makes an application, then we can convene and at least reach approval as to whether when it kicks in. So
It's new, the shorthand is that it's a new payment. So these might have existed, but people weren't getting paid. And so now they've reached a threshold where they have enough students and enough years that they now.
Appendix A can be addressed at any.
Yes.
point, Not during a negotiation contract.
Anytime, yes.
Next one.
Just appendix A committee, where does it live? In this, through this?
It lives at the all island level.
Okay.
But if you'd like to, we can talk about that whenever, if you wanna. Remember at that point after the athletic subcommittee, I said,
Yeah.
you all are invited to the next one. Mark did join at the beginning of that, but then when we started deliberating over each one, Mark had to be excused. But he was able to see that and you're welcome to come to one and yeah.
We
Thank
will assign you to the Appendix A subcommittee. There you go. Right there. You got it. You got it. Okay, a vote on Appendix A on those. The only, before we do, the information you sent out was for fall of 2003. So are you in?
2000.
That's, 23. It's 2023 on here.
Yeah.
So are you intending that these folks would be paid for these this year?
So
Some of
I'm
them have already-
not, that's the part where I'm
Okay.
wanting to work with JLMC to get that. And then I can come to you about, what that would look like contractually.
Okay.
I believe it should start because, as you pointed out, there are certain thresholds that need to be met for it to be an Appendix A consideration. And my belief is that it falls in the next fiscal year, the beginning of the next fiscal year. So if there's
So it'll
something
be
that
fall of
happens,
24.
that's my belief, but I'm going.
Okay.
I'm
Well, some
trying
of
to-
them have
I'm trying
already
to figure
happened,
that
like junior high football isn't happening now and anyway. Okay, so I would enter, so Skipper.
I'm going to abstain, I'm not convinced we have budget money to cover it.
Would you like to hold the vote until we know?
Well, that's up to the committee.
Yeah.
I just think that because he's not sure, the superintendent's not sure himself, but depending when it takes effect, we might not be able to have the money budget. I think it won't be something that.
Well, that's why I want to make sure that we're not, that's why, exactly why I'm asking if it's 23 or 24, because, so.
I wish I had the answer at this.
So I would think we should table this until we know if we have the money and we know when it's gonna happen. So, can I ask whoever to withdraw your,
So we'll
withdraw and Roxanne, will you? Okay, perfect.
And I'll say, it is a stipend, so it's not like a monthly payment, so it
Right.
can be addressed.
Okay, all right, there was, anything else? Nice to see all of you here. Did anybody want to say anything while you're here to?
What a beautiful.
Okay, and,
Motion to.
I was just saying, there's one other thing, but I can't. Anyway, all right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Before we do, thank you very much, Shelley and John and Edgartown School Committee for allowing us to come and see your great spot.
That's right.
Motion to adjourn.
All in favor, Skipper?
That's right.
That's the old one.
Chair.
Houghton, aye.
Line aye.
Salvo.
Aye.
Lumen, I.
Roxanne, O'Brien, I.
Malachi?
Awesome. Thank you, Amy, for doing that for us.
Thank you, Amy.